Hi students, I wanted to make one final video to help you through until March 9th in the topic of education. We had left off talking about what was due March 2nd. If you'll see in 171A1, I put due March 2nd, but then I just extended the deadline to March 9th. So you should be in the process of doing this reading, but also don't feel like you have to post it until the writing assignment is due, which is right here. So your writing assignment is to do a compare and contrast of two readings in the education section. With that being said, as far as your annotations, if you've skimmed the readings, or at least a handful of them, and you have an idea of where you want to go with that compare contrast, then focus in on just two is absolutely fine and a good thing to do. And I'm going through step by step of that entire process of the reading and then how to write a compare contrast essay. So if you look down here, compare contrast essay guide, are pages from Susan Anker. And then I posted this video. I posted this slideshow that you can open. It's right here. This is what I'm going to go through. So the table of contents of this slideshow is number one, the writing assignment, which we'll start with here. So due March 9th is a 4-paragraph written response on the topic of education. Your essay must have a thesis statement that contains an argument, compare two elements, come to a determination, decide something, provide a few paragraphs to provide context for your argument, create multiple paragraphs where you utilize textual information by summarizing, paraphrasing, and quoting directly from your articles to support your argument. Include the works cited page and be 2 to 4 page double spaced following the MLA format. Please feel free to share your drafts with me on Google Docs and I can give you feedback. So here is just a reminder, the pre-reading, reading, and annotating step was to skim the posted readings in education, have a L chart started on this topic, choose at least 2 of the readings to do a close critical reading and think that you're going to be comparing and contrasting 2 elements of both, either the subject matter, the message, the style used in writing them, etc. You'll annotate using the reading strategies to preview, define new words, ask questions, summarize the 5 W's, make connections to self, world, and text, and ask essential questions. All of those things go back to what we've been talking about from the first week. Annotations can be done in your notebook, on the printed reading, and/or using PowerNotes. The purpose of a compare-contrast in writing. Comparison in writing discusses elements that are similar, while contrast in writing discusses elements that are different. A compare and contrast essay then analyzes 2 subjects by comparing them, contrasting them, or both. The key to a good compare and contrast essay is to choose 2 or more subjects that connect in a meaningful way. The purpose of conducting the comparison or contrast is not to state the obvious, but rather to illuminate subtle differences or unexpected similarities. The structure of a compare-contrast essay. The compare and contrast essay starts with a thesis that clearly states the 2 subjects that are being to be compared, contrasted, or both, and the reason for doing so. The thesis could lean more toward comparing, contrasting, or both. Remember, the point of comparing and contrasting is to provide useful knowledge to the reader. Take the following thesis as an example that leans more towards contrasting. Organic vegetables may cost more than those that are conventionally grown, but when put to the test, they are definitely worth every extra penny. You may organize the compare and contrast essays in one of the following two ways: according to the subjects themselves, discussing one another, or number two, according to individual points, discussing each subject in relation to each point. And I go further into modeling that. So here's just an additional source of compare contrast essay, an example of one. The key takeaways is that it analyzes two subjects, or really the one subject of education, but choosing the two subtopics, I would say, within the subject. The point is not to state the obvious, but to illuminate subtle differences or unexpected similarities. The thesis should clearly state what is being compared, contrasted, or both. There are two main organizing strategies for the compare contrast, which are organizing by subjects themselves or organized by individual points. So now you know the assignment and you know what a compare contrast essay is and why they are useful. Now what do you do? So what I want to show you here is how to do pre-writing brainstorming using your annotations from the readings. And the pre-writing brainstorm can be used in any essay that you write in this course and other courses in your future English classes. Then I'm going to walk you through the thesis statement and how to organize your paragraphs. So the pre-writing clustering map is one way to start to get your ideas flowing. So you have a general idea of what's interested you under the topic of education, right? And you can create these cluster maps. This is a further link that can bring you through to more examples of that. Here are two essays that you can watch to help you do these brainstorms. The brainstorms are going to help to get you to asking these big questions, which then will be turned into your thesis statement. So by asking really interesting questions about the readings, this is going to help you to start your essay, which ties back to the better critical reading you do in the first place, the better your writing will be. If you feel like the cluster map and the brainstorming are too much and you don't need this step, then please go right ahead and just start listing your essential questions or your good questions. So these are questions I came up with that interested me about the topic and the readings as examples. So like number one, what are the similarities and differences in the human cost of an illiterate society and social class of the hidden curriculum of work? So just very straightforward, what are the similarities and differences? Then the second question is an example of how I get a little more specific. Is Kozel too broad in his dissection of an illiterate versus illiterate? Well, Annion's study shows several social classes in which the levels of literacy are broken up. Thirdly, what has and has not changed since Annion wrote Social Class and the Hidden Curriculum in 1980 and Kozel's Illiterate America in 1985? How does the tone affect the message in Kozel and Annon's texts about the inequalities of America's education system? Would school choice be a possible solution to the quote unquote savage inequalities in our education system in the USA? How would school choice be a possible solution to the savage inequalities? I'm just kind of rewording that here. How does illiteracy in the US compare and contrast to illiteracy globally? What are the parallels between Annion's social class and the hidden curriculum and stepping up? How are American cities delivering on the promise of public school choice? Again, don't let this overwhelm you. Go through the process, formulate the questions that you have in your mind that make sense to you, and feel free to use my questions to gather your own thoughts and question further. And from there, you want to look at, okay, which question is most manageable for me? Which question, I know this assignment is only 2 to 4 pages. I'm not writing a book about the topic. I'm not going to spend a ton of time doing additional research. I'm using the readings already provided that I've already skimmed and focused on. So, what do I know the most about? What readings were most interesting and easy to handle for me, and which direction do I want to go? So you want to use the problem solving and your own learning to make this meaningful and also to utilize your time. So I had picked the one question and then I did a quick run through that was fresh in my mind what the similarities and differences were. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to stick with that question. From there, the next step is to turn that question into a thesis statement, which, you can have a few different versions of. And that thesis statement may change a little bit over time. So you may have one and then change it up a little bit before you hand in the paper. And then again, with the other source had provided earlier on in the slideshow, there are 2 different ways to do this organization. Also, Susan Anker's Real Writing book, the chapter Compare and Contrast, is going to offer you nice outlines as well, nice guides to write this. And I posted those pages in EBS 033 if you didn't receive the book yet. The next slides are just reminders what an essay should look like. So your introduction paragraph should have the introduction, which introduces the topic. It introduces both text, the titles, the authors, the year written, a nice summary of both, and it will lead you down like an inverted triangle to your thesis statement, typically. Each of your body paragraphs will start with a topic sentence, which is going to guide the reader and guide you to stay on topic of what you want to talk about in that body paragraph. Explain the topic sentence in a summary. Add direct quote, otherwise also called in this course and other courses in-text citations. We've also referred to this process as your quote sandwich, where you're putting the direct quote with that summary lead in ahead of it, and then you're following up with that direct quote with your own analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. And then you're closing each body paragraph with a concluding sentence. And the concluding sentence can start with a transitional phrase, such as furthermore, in conclusion, to sum up, always followed by a comma, and then a nice big solid point that ties it all together. To remind you of those transitions, to lead in and out of paragraphs and also in and out of quotes, please use the required text for the course, the They Say I Say book. At this point in the course, you should be up to chapter 3, according to what I assigned. They're short chapters. You may also have browsed beyond that, and you please should be using the index of templates. Finally, your conclusion, restate your thesis statement. and points, but go beyond and do further analysis, synthesis, and overall evaluation or evaluate. So don't just regurgitate, make it meaningful and purposeful. What are the big messages and takeaways you want to leave your reader with? What further questions are you left with? Remember, again, I'm emphasizing this. This is a 2 to 4 page, and 4 is a max. Okay, so typically, if the majority of students fall around 3 pages, that's good. And you should be left with further questions. And remember, we are doing a short research paper towards the end of the semester. So if you are left with a bigger question under this topic of education that you want to do for your further research paper, you already have the work started and your thoughts started. So keep that in mind. Just a quick revision checklist. Reread your work a few times. Read it aloud. If you can, read it to someone. Listen and look for grammatical errors, spelling errors. Change any words that you overuse. Do not use informal words such as stuff and things, or leave anything without an explanation. As you read it aloud, as you read your writing aloud, imagine that your writing is like a conversation. You want to be sure that you are fully explaining your thoughts and ideas. Is your thesis statement clear? Do you have a clear topic sentence and concluding sentence in each paragraph? Do you really complete a SACE in each body paragraph? So are you really hitting that critical thinking? Do you use in-text citations from the readings to enhance your points? And is your conclusion an overall thoughtful evaluation of both articles, your point and your thesis statement? So this is really what I'm looking for an A paper if you're hitting all of these marks. And also, just to note, you have a proper works cited page and you have everything in MLA format. Here's a reminder of the resources I've mentioned. And that's about it for this video. Good luck, and email me with questions.